Hey, folks, and welcome to the Artist Exchange Radio Show here live only on the BeExposedRadio.com. I'm your host, as always, Nate Couser. I have a special guest with us on this Friday, Mr. Derick Ebert. Am I saying it right? Okay,
Yeah.
I was practicing it. I was practicing that all day. And today we're going to talk a little bit about who he is. Well, a lot about who he is, what he does, writing, being a poet. This new phase for writers now, thanks to the lovely young lady who graced our presence on Inauguration Day. She's given a bigger spotlight than it already was, because I hear a lot of people saying it's coming back, but I don't really think it's gone anywhere. Writing and spoken word in that fashion, performance art in general. But before we do, there's some good house cleaning. This is Big Exposed Radio. It's a black-owned station in the Baltimore DMV area. You can hear it from wherever you have internet connection. We need your help in supporting us. So you can go to our YouTube page at Big Exposed Radio, like, share, subscribe, all those things. Tell a friend. If you're looking for a home for a show, this is the place for you. We help you not only jumpstart a brand new idea, but we help you to kind of revamp an idea you already have. If you already have a show and you're looking for a new home, if you have an idea for a show and you need a home, Big Exposed Radio is the place to be. Don't forget, the Artist Exchange is, we haven't changed our hours, but we have cut Mondays at 5 just for a season. I need a little bit of a break. Being a teacher, an artist, and all those things, I just need a little break sometimes. And not only that, but I've started a new podcast. That's why I kind of need a break. So I'm on the Binge Worthy podcast series, a series that examines the impact of Black film actors and the arts, both in TV and film. And as soon as this pandemic is over, we'll be dissecting some plays and musical events as well. And that's the Binge Worthy podcast. It comes on every Tuesday at 3 p.m. with myself and my co-host G. Oliver. And it's we kind of look at the social, cultural, and historical impact of these films. Not all of them are Black films. Not all of them are great films, but they're films nevertheless. And we're going to talk about them. And we think you need to tune in. So do that. So I got the Binge Worthy podcast and I got the Artist Exchange Radio Show here live on Big Exposed Radio. So I'm a little bit busy. So excuse me if I don't always be where everybody needs me. And sidebar, for the people who are still sending me requests to come places, if you got a live stream, I'll tune in. I'll buy a ticket. But right now, Rona is on these streets, and this is the confounds of my social media and social distancing. So without further ado, I want to welcome my guest today, Mr. Derick, to the Artist Exchange Radio Show. I've been trying to book you since you became the poet laureate. So I've been looking through your messages. I've been sending you messages, but there are a few artists that I follow a lot of artists, but certain individuals who I just enjoy your work. I first saw you perform when your group, the young organization that you were with, when you first became poet laureate. Y'all did an event at the Pratt Library downtown, the main library, and I saw you perform, and I thought your piece, and it wasn't just about the spectacle and all the oohs and ahs and the snaps that you do, which you're very well at your performance, but it was content. I'm big on especially young artists in their content and not just doing things for say. So how you doing, sir?
Doing well, Nate. Thank you for having me on the platform. I really do appreciate it. And no complaints on this side. None at all.
I mean, I just noticed he got the little fireplace in the background. This vibing out a little bit. Okay. let me, next time I'm gonna get my fireplace in the screen so people can see me mellowing out and such.
See, that's
Uh,
great, though. You're doing your thing.
but it's been a minute since you won Poet Laureate, and you've been doing a lot before then, after then. What has life been? You're an adult now. Last time I saw you perform, you were a teenager.
I'm a
So you're a
teenager.
grown man now. So
I know, a whole grown man. It doesn't even feel like it sometimes.
mm, them bills will
Man,
tell you otherwise.
the bills will tell you otherwise. Yes, yeah, they will. They will. They will. And everything else that goes on, thinking about marriage and things like that too. Life is
Oh,
just, I know, right? Life is just
grown man stuff.
grown, real grown man stuff. Man, after that run at being Youth Poet Laureate for a year, when I passed the torch on in 2016,
Hmm.
I continued it. I don't know if you knew, but I was at University of Baltimore for a while. When I graduated in
Hmm.
2017, I went up to New York, and I was up in New York for a good 3 years, man. And I loved hated it. Like I never
Hmm.
liked New York as a kid. Like
Okay.
I never because it was all that like the hype. I'm not one
Yeah.
to follow the hype and the buzz. So it's like, oh, New York, everybody want to go to New York, everybody want to move to New York. And I was the last
Mm.
person. I'm like, no, I really don't. But grad school and the school offered me money and like
So
it's a
we
good
got to go to New York.
look like I gotta go to New York. I don't want to go to New York. New York want me to go there. So I was like, all right, I'm out Baltimore.
There we
Um,
go.
and then yeah, I got my master's in writing, and I thought, you know what? Because I had this opportunity to be out of Maryland, like a lot of people in my family hadn't had the opportunity, and a lot of people like I know, even in New York. Now I'm not even talking about Baltimore.
Hmm.
You can ask a bunch of people in New York, hey man, have
Right.
you ever lived outside of the state or the city? And they'll be like, no. I'd be like, no,
Okay.
I'll be like, traveled outside the country. And I get that some people may not have been afforded that opportunity, but I wanted to stay in New York for another year because I was like, while I'm out, let me take advantage of this opportunity. Because if
Hmm.
I come
Yeah.
back soon, I may have ruined something for me. I may find something
Yeah.
in Baltimore, but why not just see what's out there? And so I was at Bard College up in like the boonies of New York, up by like Albany. It's like an
Oh
hour south
wow.
of Albany. So it's like the mountains. Every day I was a residence life like always I was like their boss. So every day I'd wake up to like mountains and shit. And for me, being from the city, it was a new experience. So I'm
Yeah.
back though. Long story to wrap it all up, what have I been up to? I've been in New York, I've been up to the mountains, I've still been writing, been still doing all that. Now I'm back in Maryland.
And speaking of people in their 4 block radius, we were talking about Cherry Hill before we came on live. And various places like Baltimore, city atmospheres can sometimes keep you confound. And it's not always sometimes it's the opportunity, sometimes it's the money, but sometimes it's representation. It's also if your parents didn't travel the world, what reason would you have, or
Right.
what idea would you have in traveling the world or seeing other places? And you can be international from any address. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying everybody needs to go to Singapore and New York and London, but do what you feel compelled to do. But just get outside of your neighborhood at some point. I remember the first time I got out of Baltimore is when I was probably like 17. I don't think I was supposed to be, but that's when the Greyhound station was downtown. Well, it's still downtown, but it was closer to the downtown area off of Howard Street. And I remember walking past the Greyhound station, like, I wonder where, and I went in and I just saw all the locations and the price. And my first trip was to New York because I've always been an artist. So me and a friend, we took a bus up to New York, and that's what it was. Now, I have been able to travel. My mother always took us on vacations, but it's nothing like deciding for yourself and making that voyage on your own with your own money. Uh, but it sometimes it's the best way to think. I always tell people, everybody isn't afforded scholarships, but go to a community college or your local college for a year or two and then transfer out, get good grades, and then you can transfer out. Most people with PhDs and masters will tell you that's a lot of them who were educationally successful have told you They may have started at a community college or a local college and then got the ability to transfer out or do their master's degree or, continue education somewhere else. But it is nothing like seeing the city. And most performers, most artists, it's not, for me, it was never the vibe of New York. It was just, anything is possible there, and just being around all of that energy, all those people, you're bound to like run into somebody you either know or somebody you can connect with on your creative level. In terms of you coming back to Baltimore, what do you miss about New York?
Honestly, the food.
Mm.
The food was a different cultural experience, even of street food. Like we was just talking about chicken boxes before the show, but like out there, I was closer to the Bronx, and so like never in Baltimore I've never heard somebody in Baltimore be like, "Yo, where can I go to get a good empanada?" Like, but up in Bronx,
a couple good empanadas now in the city.
yeah, but like up in the Bronx, you could like that's the thing. It's at least where I was at, it was like that's the food. That's the food you're gonna eat if that's the the environment you're in or like the people you might be hanging around. It's just a different food. So that's something I miss. And then definitely upstate, like and being in upstate, being away from the city, from the noise, like waking up to like literally deer running across the field. I'm talking about some real crazy. For me, it's just so crazy to think about it. But like I miss the quiet. I like the quiet. Like you go out, that you go outside and you just don't, you don't hear no cops. You don't hear like most you hear people talking like in their dorm, maybe. It might be a party going on campus that you might hear. That might be across campus, but it's so quiet that you can hear what's going on the other side of the campus,
Right.
So I miss that for sure, but I'm happy to be back. Baltimore, when I was up there, I wanted to leave. Like I left on my own accord, leaving BART, and I wanted to come back just because I wanted to be rooted in something that was familiar to me. And I wanted to be back closer to my family. Like this whole COVID shit was popping off. I was like, I ain't being up here working at a college with college kids that will not really, they'll listen, but some college kids won't. They'll party, I won't be responsible. I was like, I'm not trying to be that responsible for this.
So you fresh back home. So that's cool. Yeah. I mean, but New York was a great first time excursion living outside the city. I think that would be a great because New York is so huge, but yet it's still so small because there's micro communities all over. So you can explore a little bit of the world going around New York. New York is just one of those places. Today, because I have you, of course, we want to get out some of the angst. We're in a new political climate in the city. We're in the midst of a pandemic. We are kind of licking our wounds from 4 years of Trumpism. What did the last 4 years do to you creative? You were away from home and you were in the midst of just all this new crazy chaos going on at one time. What did that do to you creatively, or how did it help you or influence you creatively?
That's a really good question. Because when I left, like really Trump being elected, and then that year I was at UB, I was finishing up that year at UB, and then leaving, and then having to go and be in a whole nother place while going through the duration of Trump's presidency. Honestly, I wrote a lot less. I started to listen a lot more because a lot of more people were doing a lot of talking. I was like, well, let me quiet I felt like my soul was just like, shh. And at first going through it, I imagined it as like, I mean, at that time it was like, yo, I just have a lot of writer's block. Like it's something wrong with me. Like I can't get anything out. Like what's going on? But I really found that it's like, no, while a lot of people are talking now, not everybody is saying something that's purposeful or meaningful. So it's like quiet so you can hear what you really need to hear, write a little less, and you'll say a lot more, And so I still have been writing. I haven't been writing at a frequency that maybe like a lot of my peers, but I find that the things that I do right now have way more meaning to me than like any of the work that I created while I was Youth Poet Laureate or like even starting into poetry. I'm like, yo, like I create some bangers, at least for me. And it's for me too. It's like I create that I can feel that I resonate with.
And I would say this pandemic was the very first time that I got to be still because I tried to distract myself throughout his presidency with, doing plays and, taking more teaching jobs and being a visual. Like I tried to just fill my stuff, my schedule up with creativity and just kept myself from watching the news or listen to sound bites. And you can't because you come on here, people want to talk about it. But this pandemic was that hush for me. And it allowed me to see people for who they really were. And it forced me to see myself for who I really was. It forced me to really examine and be aware of myself and my surroundings at large, and get more in tune with my focus. And coming off of Trump, it was just I felt like I was in Selma, like at that space. I felt like I was in one of those types of movies. And creativity came to a halt for me because so it's interesting for you saying you wrote less. Uh, how were you taking notes, or were you just in the moment of what you were doing and just being more aware of it?
Yeah, 100%. It kind of cut off a little bit, the Wi-Fi, that last part. Could you repeat yourself?
So, in terms of being through all of that, I knew you said you didn't write as much, but how were you taking notes, or how were you keeping track of? Okay, I'm gonna store this back here. So, how were you kind of mentally taking notes, or
Right,
what was your process for just being more aware?
right. So, when I hear like the mentally taking notes, and especially during that time in grad school, I would like there are things I can like new strategies I guess I picked up on, and this is where I was
Mm-hmm.
like I was just looking, looking and observing. But like I had a friend in grad school. Her name is TC. She's still here. Her name is TC, and she was
Mm-hmm.
one of the things I used to do is basically like she suggested instead of writing things down as often, using like the voice recorder on your phone because
Oh,
then you
okay.
can document things anywhere. You don't gotta like I don't know if you've ever had this, if you like writing something down or you're like, oh shit, I gotta find a pen or a pencil and like I mean you could use maybe the notes on your phone, but by the time you do that, you're trying to write the thing out, you forget it.
Mm-hmm.
Like it's kind of like it's losing it's escaping you as you can the more you continue to type. And I was
Right.
like, so for me, like during that time, if it ever came to writing something creative down or an idea, honestly, just put the record button on, like record yourself, create content. But what I would do is record myself and like
Mm-hmm.
go throughout the day and just talk out loud, you know, and like my phone's gonna record it. I'll play it back and like listen, be like, oh, that was something cool that I said, or like I could be anywhere and I'd be like, yo, I've recorded this conversation. Like I don't even remember, but like there's some meat in here that I can use maybe for a piece.
Mm. In terms of so undergrad is different because you still have your same level of um uh socializing and communicating, and you were still home at the time, but on a grad school level, what was the difference?
Man, let me tell you, I didn't know how to cook when I got to grad school. I
Oh
really
wow.
didn't. I had friends. Cause like I'm a mama's boy, and I lived like you said, I lived at home. I was living at home while I was going to undergrad, so like I had things provided for me. And if I wasn't eating none of the food my mom cooked, I was using the money at my job to pay for food. So whatever. When I get to grad school, I'm living on
Mm,
campus. This is like my first real college experience of living on campus, grad school.
mm-hmm.
And I'm like, microwaving, like doing all the undergrad stuff, nourishment for my body, which isn't healthy.
Mm,
And so that was like that. Even in itself, grad school was a really like I just had to mature faster. Like and you've Laureate when you brought that up earlier, like that caused me to mature faster as an artist. But then like
mm-hmm.
grad school caused me to mature faster as like an adult and as a human being to provide for
Right.
myself. So yeah, that's in grad school I learned a lot about writing, but I learned a lot about cooking too and how to take care of myself.
And sometimes a lot of people recently have been kind of putting down the idea of Black people going to college or higher education in terms of we don't need it, especially if you're a performing artist or artist in general. We don't need it, but I've always told people the experiences that you have in college, and not just with other people, but with yourself, what you learn, the habits that you kind of break and then develop at the same time. That is the experience that you sometimes don't get from the hard knocks of life education or YouTube University. You don't
Right.
always get that experience, especially if you get to stay on campus. You don't
Right.
always get that. That's a whole nother experience living with somebody, and you used to having your room, and now you sharing a room, or you sharing a suite,
Yes.
or bathrooms, and
Yes.
learning people's behavior and human behavior in terms of getting along and introducing yourself and networking and
Yes.
just being a fellow classmate of somebody. You learn so much. And I tell people, at least try it one time. It
Oh,
may not be for everybody. I'll say it that way, but
right.
try it one time because you'll learn a lot about yourself, people, and you'll definitely grow. You'll be
Yeah.
forced to
Yeah.
sink or swim, if you will.
Yeah. Yeah.
What have you learned about yourself as an adult so far? How old are you
I'm
anyway?
25.
Okay.
25.
So
What?
you in a good space right now where you still, you know, you holding on to youth, but 30 is, a good sprint away. But what have you learned about yourself up into 25?
You are definitely right about holding on to that youth. What have I learned about myself at 25? I'll say a recent discovery that I've learned about myself is to trust my process.
Okay.
Like, this might sound bad, but it's not, because for me, it's my process. Like, I don't typically, somebody might see, or I would sometimes see the work that I do when I create, like if it's
Mm-hmm.
for an open mic or for a feature, or if I'm commissioned to do something, I gestate. And I did learn this from grad school. Like,
Mm-hmm.
I actually learned this from reading some poems in grad school, oddly enough. Maybe that had nothing to do with it. But like how a bird will get its nest together. It'll just like pick up, go fly and get some trash, and it's like slowly like just gestate, like build this nest out of nothing. And like
Mm-hmm.
that's how and then it'll keep adding and adding and adding until eventually it's complete, until like there's this birth that happens, which is like the eggs and the chicks or whatever. But up until
Mm-hmm.
that process, the nest is never really done. So like what I've learned about myself is that with my own process, like for me, a poem is never complete. It's never really complete.
Mm-hmm.
But two, like the work doesn't have to be on a physical sheet of paper for it to be like, oh, I have something. Like I've learned to just trust my computer up here. Be like, I
Mm-hmm.
got it. Like I got the poem. Like I have all these different observations and inspirations stored up here. It's just waiting for that God moment, or that moment where I can, like, my soul is like, okay, now we're ready. Let's press play, and like the poem will come out. Or like I'll have a night, or be like, damn, I'm going to like the studio tomorrow. Like literally, this has happened. Like, yo, I'm going to the studio tomorrow.
Mm-hmm.
I ain't got a song for the studio, but I've collected all these experiences with me for 2 weeks. I've known I was going to go to the
Right.
studio. All right, bet. Let me like, this is where I press play, I activate it, and then I can just like. So it's
Just
like not
show up. Yeah. Always be prepared.
trust myself, but trust myself that I will show up and still be prepared. Just do things that help me be prepared. You
Mm-hmm.
know.
So
Yeah.
one of the things, so you're wearing your Do More Baltimore shirt, and people who are outside of the DMV who haven't been beat by either the youth or the adult Do More team, and don't been living under a rock, with all the awards and accolades that you all have collected. Uh, that is a that is a training ground that I got to see because I went to a number of the events that the youth and the adult slam teams have put together. But I got to work at their summer camp, their workshop camp for writers one summer, and I saw the amount of dedication that you all have, especially the youth team. So, can you talk a little bit about how that organization kind of helped you prepare yourself for your artistry right now?
Yeah, it created that environment, and that camaraderie of peers who were interested, who had the same interest, not only on the writing level, but they're like,
Mm-hmm.
how you listen to songs, or a person's poem, that they'll just have things in there for like particular pockets of audiences. So you might
Mm-hmm.
have like, I'll have some lines that might relate to animation or cartoons, and like,
Okay.
if a part of somebody else's identity other than being a writer is like that nerd aspect as well, you can create that environment. Well, you have that environment there where like you can just bond over things like, yo, that's a dope way you wrote that, or you wrote like you made that punchline, or you formed that like lyrical verse out of like that moment in that cartoon, or whatever. Like Jacob, Black Chakra got a whole one punch man, a whole One Punch Man poem, but about like, I think it's about like Donald Trump. One Punch Man. If you don't know the anime, like it's if he one punches you, you're done. You're out. Like that's it. You KO'd.
Right.
Like Jacob created a whole poem around that concept, but used it where it's like, what if black? I think it was like, what if black people had this like ability, And it's just like, damn, Jacob, that's powerful, and like that can reach to so many audiences. So like as a like being in that, like you said, it was a battleground. Like we showed up every Sunday at Red Emma's when it was at Red Emma's with like either poems or like workshops. But we were there. I don't know. We were there to like impress each other as well as impress, push each other to go further with like our bars. I think that's where I was always competitive, but then like when it got to words, that's where it really being and do more helped me get more competitive and have more confidence,
But it seemed so healthy. And I remember at Red Emma's when it was on North Avenue, watching you all, and I think I asked not Shinye, I asked Shinye, like, how old are these people? And she was telling me how young you all were, and I couldn't have imagined. And I had a whole job and going to private schools, and I still didn't have that level of dedication to my creativity, taking classes every weekend and after school. And you all were so far ahead of yourself. I watched some of you all like Grimm. I watched some of you all kind of catch up to your age at some point, or your age catch up to you at some point. And it was amazing to see the level of dedication. And it wasn't until we did that one summer camp where, I watched the adult slam team as teachers, and I was one of the instructors. I watched them kind of teach you all. And then after class, some of the youth poets would get together and prepare for slam. I think y'all had some slams coming up. And I would watch y'all still, after taking some of the ones that were a part of the camp, still taking the classes, and then after going into the room and practicing with Shinyer and Slangston and such, and just that level of dedication. You all were 30 some years old before you even got to 21, and it was just amazing. And Shinyer and a number of those mentors that you all had did not play with you all, and they didn't talk to you like a regular teacher would talk to you all. How did that prepare you to go up to a lot of these competitions in front of these judges and the competition you had? How did that prepare you?
So I'll say it's crazy. My slam experience compared to my peers is like probably 10 games and then less, like 10 games and less. Like I'm like, I'll be like, I made my wins and I got out. I was like, peace out. And then I did like the conference circuit and like the open mic circuit, right? And the features, bus boys and poets, and like performing at different colleges. But what I will say, because I feel like it exists in both, is like, they didn't take bullshit. They literally did not take bullshit from us. And excuse me, I don't know if I can curse.
Go ahead.
They didn't take that shit from us. Like Kenneth Morrison, going by Kenneth something as his poetry name, was my specific mentor of that group, of the Slangstons, the Breons, the Fire Angelus, and the Slangstons. And like, so with conferences, like they just prepared us for the stage. It like really groom is a great word, because it's like, this is how you carry yourself as an artist and as a poet, like, and as a performer when you get on stage. And for slams, it's like, you always hear it a lot. It's not about the points, it's about the poetry. But then what I've learned is like, we're happy you can do this poem and you can write these amazing words. But then once you're done being a performer, can you still act like that advocate that you were advocating for in your poems? And that's for me when I work with youth, it's like, that's cool. Like, I'm happy you can write well, but how are you also living in this way, in the way of your art? Because if you're not, then it's like, we gotta talk. We gotta talk.
Right.
Like you can't just write a piece about social justice or about whatever and then fake the funk. You know,
And
it's
you're
somewhere
not
you gotta
living
live. You
it.
gotta live that life. Yeah.
In terms of, so now moving forward to you then becoming an educator yourself and working with a lot of the inner cities youth, what was that experience like? Because people don't know the struggle of a teaching artist until you step in front of a class and you wasn't ready for it.
Right. Well, man, yo, teacher art experience. I'm looking, but like I'm looking and I'm seeing all the experiences, right? I'm like my first teaching artist experience ever was at a group home.
Mm,
And also like we talk about like young people working with young people.
right.
But then I'm working at a group home and I've never had an experience of ever I don't know anybody in a group home, never had the experience of being in a group home.
Hmm.
But it's like, so again, we this whole time we've been talking about like, yo, you had to become 30 or 25, 20 fast because
Right.
like the homes that people produced in certain those environments, inner city schools, you know, all
Hmm.
that. How do you have to, and I ain't have a psychology degree, but like how you gotta be able to work and you can work with these people as people. You yourself could be human. Yeah, I
Hmm.
mean, like it just goes back to yo. I had to grow up quick. I worked at the Baltimore Leadership School for Young Women. I remember
Hmm.
we placed third place. I don't know if you attended our Louder Than a Bomb event. I was a coach of the Baltimore Leadership School for Young Women, and we placed third.
Hmm.
Like all of at the sacrifice of like my young ladies having to go up there and spit pieces about like molestation, like
Yeah.
personal. Like,
Personal.
and it's
Personal.
as a 19 or 20-year-old who hasn't gone through that as a male who's never gone through the experience, and like I've known women to go through the experience, but it's like you had to coach them and help their emotions out. Like they rehearsed, had to rehearse that bring that traumatic experience back up. So like, yo, it was a lot.
And and I think what a lot of people, I think some of us get quote unquote stuck in a teaching artist realm because it's so therapeutic to our own struggles, our own trauma. But at the same time, it is nothing like sitting in front. And these are not just high school and college students. These are middle school and elementary school students who are taking these classes. And the moment you circle up and begin to share, they are telling you stories that 40-some-year-old people would be telling you. And it's amazing on one side, but I found myself I had an all the summer I went with do more. I had an all young ladies group. All it was all young ladies, and one after another. I think it was like 8 of them. All of them had an experience with being molested or abused in some way. And it was hard for me to be a theater teacher and not want to coddle them. And I remember Shinir telling me, you have to let them use their struggle. Let them use their struggle, give them their space, give them their time, but they have to learn how to use that in a more focused, more determined, more positive way. So it's I mean, just the stories, and I'm sure you're writing poetry. I'm giving them lines and asking them to use emotion, but you're actually asking them to write their own story. So I can imagine what was coming out. Somebody who may not have had all of the struggles, but you are aware, if not, personal, somebody who's dealt with some level of struggle. But how have you grown in that? Because I'm quite sure now, even on the collegiate level that you're teaching on now, you're going to have people telling you things that will amaze you because it's not your personal experience. How do
Yeah.
you deal with that?
You know, I don't know, like that even itself is a hard like rope or tightrope to walk on because
Hmm.
in the academic world, in the institutional world, it's like you got to refer these people to to the dean or to the advisor, to the school
Hmm.
therapist, if it's like something like that. Which like
Right.
I do when I worked up at Bard, I was in residence life. We would get students almost all the time, every month that's like I'm suicidal for some reason, and it's like, okay, we gotta make sure you get the help you need. But being on the professor's side, I'm still like a mandated reporter in that way, but I'm also, and this is the same with the youth, like a confidant. Like I have students who write their essays and will write essays around like topics around that. And it's like, you meet with them. For me, like I'm thinking of one student in particular, like I just, if we're meeting during that one-on-one to talk about that essay, it's not really about that essay. It's just to allow them to pour out if they need to pour out more, and I'll be like, okay,
Venting is great.
Right. But I'll still make it about the essay. It's like, okay, this is how you direct it, because this is for you. It's really for them. And learning as itself is always for the subject, which is the, that person. But it's tough. But I think it's really back to like the safe space as well. Like when we were able to flesh out our own things in front of our peers, like it's because we felt like we were safe. And so one of the jobs that I have now, at least as a professor, other than being the educator, is also to feel like people can just open up in front of each other, that we build a room, all of us build a room that it's like, okay, whatever we say stays here. Like, and we respect that. And I'm telling you, because I'm teaching CCBC, we definitely had some Biden supporters and some Trump supporters. So the election was rocky, but I'm not going to walk away or turn my back to that. We're coming up on this election. I definitely was like, yo, let's talk about the election. We're going to have a whole class on this subject, but like, it was the way, the sneaky way of kind of going about it. Same way, like thinking about Jacob in that One Punch Man poem, but it being referenced to like, maybe putting a hit on Donald Trump. It's like, you got to approach conversations in a way where people can drop that Republican Democrat bullshit and just be like, this is why I believe what I believe.
Because even hate has a story, even just like hurt and distrust and all the emotions that a person can have. Everybody has a story, and once we realize that everybody has a reason for being where they are, and it's not just happenstance. That I believe in Trump, because it could be my parents did it, so this is what I'm doing. The same way, we go through trauma because our parents went through trauma. So understanding that everything isn't black and white, and there's a lot more gray areas in life than anything. It's and me thinking about interviewing you, some of the questions that I had for you was in that vein. But one of the ones that kept coming to me was, how have you learned how to be transparent in telling your stories and painting your verbal pictures?
Wow.
Or are you there yet?
I think I'm not there yet, but this goes back to like that cleverness, because I don't feel like people can take certain truths and certain people's truths. Like my truths is just my truth. Like Dave Chappelle in a way. It's like Dave Chappelle truth is Dave Chappelle truth, and people will either be offended or they'll see the point that he's trying to make. But I think it's back to, again, being clever with it. It's like, let me unveil the mask or reveal the lift the veil for you, but in a way you might understand. So I don't feel like I've gotten to the point where I really have been able to be fully transparent and or figure out, how do I lift this thing without having, I don't want people to walk away because I want them to see the reveal, but like, how do I keep them long enough to like see, to continue to watch the screen? Like, for instance, I had a kind of like a lecture that I did for the sorority, Alpha Kappa Alpha Incorporated, AKA. And like, I've been reading, I read a lot of books, and like, one of the things I always held in me was like, or this book that I have is Not Our Kind of People, with like secret societies and how, the light skin, dark skin, with how the history of the AKA organization. It's like, I wanted to do, and we were talking about representation. It's just like, how do I reveal certain things like without making some people uncomfortable? Because what I've learned is, it's like, you don't really want to make people, the point is not to make people uncomfortable, it's to make people learn. Because if you make them uncomfortable and they walk away, they're not going to learn nothing.
I'm going to tell you, at 25, don't worry about it.
Yeah. Thank you.
If that releases you a little bit, but by the time you get to 30, you're not going to be concerned with how someone sees your truth. And the older you get, for some people it takes them a little bit longer. Some people it's like clockwork. But I know for me at 30, as an artist, I no longer felt naked on stage, but I felt more empowered on stage. When I was telling stories that reflected my life, I would still feel anxious. I would still, and even on a writing tip, um, a teacher once, a foolish teacher told me that I had a phobia of writing. And that phobia was really me feeling vulnerable in sharing my truth on paper. I just had an issue with that. And I don't know how I got through undergrad writing as little as possible. I swear to you, I don't know how I did it. But allowing myself to now, like working on my first book now, the vulnerability, I don't care what you think. And right now you're still at a space where you still have concern because right now as a professional artist, image is everything. But at some point you're gonna pour out and you haven't even opened your mouth. It's gonna be in your aura. It's gonna be in your you ever meet somebody who you can tell they've been through life, but their energy is so strong that you can see it without them even opening their mouth. You can see the journey they've gone through. And not that they look like they're experienced, but they just have overcome to a level where they're so comfortable in their space. And we both know adults who haven't even gotten to that space. But how powerful are the individuals who allow themselves to be free, especially as artists? It's almost backwards to be an artist who can't speak freely. And we're both performing artists. How crazy would that be if I can't be me, but yet I'm on stage as a character, or you are delivering in front of a huge workshop of people your story or your artistry, but you still can't be free. So I'll tell you at 25, don't worry about it. By the time you get to 30, on the journey that you're on right now, probably before you get to 30, it's just gonna come out your mouth. Truth is just gonna come out, and you gonna see the words and want to grab them, but they gonna already be out your mouth. And
I
it's just gonna
appreciate
be
it.
learning how to balance that so you're not reckless.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. It's crazy. Like last month, this was my first time ever having a clairvoyant experience.
Mm,
And this one, Olu?
a deja vu moment.
Right. No. So for Dumore, because I was working with Dumore, and we brought the clairvoyant in for the staff, and like she
Hmm.
went around and was like for 5 minutes, she was telling literally each of us about ourselves. And when she got to me, she was like, they're telling you I think she was saying like the ancestors are saying, or somebody saying in my ear that you are the guy with the keys, that you
Mm,
open the doors, but you are not. She was like, but you have been quiet. Your mouth has been shut for a long time now, which is what I've been telling you. Like I've been quiet
hmm.
for since I've left Baltimore. But she was
Hmm.
like, but once you start to open your mouth, you will start to free people because you're the guy with the keys. She was like, so once
Hmm.
you learn that you are that guy, you
Right.
just open your mouth and doors will open. And I'm like, oh my God. Like it was powerful. It was
Hmm.
that was my first experience, but I would have more because that was great.
Did you connect with? I mean, I understand what she was saying, but did you connect that to what was personally going on, or do you understand why you're quiet and you're not exposing, or you're not? Um, I'm not even going to say transparent, but you're not opening up. Do you understand why you're not opening up?
I think that's the journey I'm still on.
Okay,
I think
and
that
that's
might.
fair. That's
I think
fair.
what you said with I did connect to it emotionally in that moment because for me at least I see this like this is what I've been going through. Like I understand why she's saying what she's saying, but
Hmm.
why I'm still not opening as much is I think what I'm still figuring out.
And it's more there. And as I said, at 25, don't stop worrying about it. It's going to naturally happen if you're staying in tune and you're going on a journey that you are here for. If you're sticking to your purpose, so don't stress over not knowing what it is, or or even knowing what it is and not feeling comfortable yet. Don't worry about it, because there's going to come a moment where somebody's going to have to say, Derek, shut up. Ease up on it. You telling too much. And then you're going to have to learn how to balance, because everybody's not privileged, should not have the privilege of your truth. So it's going to be that's going to be the next journey, learning how to balance that. Because I had to learn, you can't tell everything, Nate, because sometimes that's a bias against you, or the wrong people will learn your information. But don't stress over any of that. You're on your journey, but I love to speak to writers about their self-awareness, because you write so much, and then how much of you is in your work? I guess that's my next question.
I would say not more recently, because the most writing I've been doing recently has been music.
Okay.
And so I would say a lot. And at first it was definitely superficial. Like, I've been trying to write music for at least a year now. So for this whole year-long journey from January 2020 to now, it was all superficial, artificial at first, raps, but then it kind of started to become more personal. In fact, this line that I had recently, that when I was at the studio, my cousin heard it. He had never heard like this. He had never heard the line before, but I had referenced. The line was like, bank leans. Hold on, let me remember for a second. It's like, I've been down bad before the floor started giving. Bank leans took Gibbons. Gibbons is the name of a house that my family, we went through a foreclosure. We went through 2 foreclosures. This was the second house that went through foreclosure. And so, but when he heard that line, bank leans took Gibbons, he was like, he was in the other room. I could see him. I was recording the line, and he was like in the other room, like, yo, I remember that. He went through that experience with us, because we had to move in with him and my grandmother. And so I think what's really crazy, rapping and writing music has actually produced, I think, way more honest work and personal work than my poetry.
And I think because, music can sometimes give like false comfort, because sometimes you hear what the person said, but you also listening to the music, the melody, and you're not hearing the words. That's why I'm really big on content and listening to what people are saying, and that's one of the reasons I heard you, because you didn't have a lot of Ibsen, aim, and it wasn't a lot of spectacle around your words. You were great, but you were just talking, and you were delivering it. You had a stage presence, but I heard what you were saying. And for me to connect that with your age, a lot of what I've heard you perform is as another Black man. It sometimes is hurtful, because a lot of people don't have that freedom of expression. There's a lot of Black men, both young and old, that are walking these Baltimore streets, not even the world yet, just dealing with the city, that don't have the freedom to be as expressive as many of the artists that we know, black men included. And it's just heartbreaking, because I see a lot of young men, even your age, that don't have the freedom, or they haven't given themselves the freedom, or realize it's their choice, it's their freedom, to be able to express the things that go on in life. And talking about any financial issues is embarrassing to anybody. The strongest person will be embarrassed. So just imagine, somebody who hasn't realized the freedom they have in expressing themselves. That's why I love teaching people who don't want to be artists, because they may still leave my class not wanting to be an artist, but they have discovered that they have something over here that they can do to release when they want to. What has been the most rewarding thing about being a teacher?
Ooh. I think seeing when they enjoy learning, because college, I'm like, I can see the silver lining in things, and I'm on the fence a lot. College is business. not everybody. So when you mentioned earlier that some people don't feel like they need to go to college, I agree. Not everybody needs to go to get their MFA because it's white. Like private, where I went to get my MFA, and I don't know too many like all inclusive number of Black people is going to be great. It's diverse, whatever. The curriculum is like for you. It's not. It's not. I don't know any MFA that is for us. So, and what I would say a lot of times when I left is like, I don't know if I really need to spend 2 years and $60,000 in debt to like learn what I learned there. Where if I had maybe disciplined myself more, maybe did something else. But that's a whole nother thing. I encourage people to do what they want. I'm for to go get your higher education or not. But what the most valuable experience is like seeing when they get to enjoy the learning. And like take part in not take part, but invest in themselves more. So like back to that Donald Trump, when we were in November doing the discussion, one of the things I say, because I teach writing, essay writing, composition, is like, I was like, y'all, before we as human beings ever were writing with pens, we were oratory speakers. So your essays, I was like, just imagine your essays as speech. I was like, and it'll make things just, sometimes teachers in high school or maybe middle school tell students, you write how you talk. Like, that's a problem. We'll change that. But like, let's not try to change that first. Because at least, like you're saying, they're getting it out. And it's crazy about that with Black men. One of the hardest things for me as a professor was having Black men in my class that unfortunately dropped out. And like, it was hard to see because it just, I was, try my best to like get them to be like, come on, we're gonna write this essay or we're gonna do this thing, da 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 da. But it wasn't, it's hard for me to motivate, or not hard for me to motivate because I was trying to motivate, but they didn't just latch on to it. That was the hardest.
It's hard to receive motivation sometimes, especially when you don't feel you are either deserving of it, or for a lot of Black men, we just don't have that freedom of voice, and we do have it. I'm gonna change the way I speak. We don't realize the freedom we have in our emotions and saying when something is hard. Because when we go to the dean or the chairperson or the therapist at the school and say, look, man, this is hard. I'm trying to work a full-time job. I'm trying to do these classes and something ain't, it ain't working. And when we do that, we are scolded. Whereas the women are more so, okay, so let's get back to why they go through the stage, they're allowed to go through the stages of emotion. I'm not comparing men and women at all, Black men and women. But it's hard. I've seen students, and funny we're talking about this, it was a thought of mine, because a lot of, when I ask students to write stuff, if they don't know how to write, because I'm dealing with elementary school students. So a lot of them are still learning the words to say, let alone the actual words to write. So I think that may be my new strategy, to have them record themselves versus write this and bring it back. Because it may help people to express a little bit more, because you'll wind up saying things that you would not necessarily say on paper, verbally and orally.
Right. And another thing with my college students is like, they would hear me talk, or I would write like a mock essay for them, and they'll be like, but I don't have the vocabulary that you have, or like whatever. And I'll be like, nah, one, don't put yourself down like that. Don't say like, you don't have it now, fine, but that doesn't mean you won't one day have it. It's by choice.
And what is it? It for you is different from it for me.
Exactly. Right. The fluidity. I think maybe they might have, I don't know if they might have known, they might have maybe been talking about the fluidity, but like my honest story, and this is honest to God, you can ask my mom, I was horrible. I failed all my English classes in high school until I got to my junior and my senior year. I was reading below my grade. I was reading on a 5th grade level when I was in 7th grade. And this is not to me being like, I overcame all, no. I never thought I would get here. I never thought it was possible. I'm still like.
So what was different about that teacher?
What do you mean that teacher?
That teacher that year. What was different about that teacher?
Well, I had an interest. So not in my junior year. My senior year, I had a particular interest in that teacher because he was my baseball coach. but then he also introduced me, because this is the key part, and I always will say this to people, and this is why for me the MFA was what it was, introducing people to representation. The reason I became who I am, I owe all of it to James Baldwin. All of it to James Baldwin. Like, I picked up his book, read his story, started to watch his interviews, and I'll be like, oh my God, here's a black man. And then we can talk about masculinity on a whole nother different side of the world. Like, but here's a black man who I can see myself in, and like his parts of his story, and like him being open. We talk about being open. I'm like, yo, like, I needed this. Going through high school, I didn't really have that.
Yeah.
I didn't have a lot of writers.
What schools did you go to?
I went to City, right? You would think City.
Okay.
You would think City, but I don't know. I didn't feel exposed at that time to enough work that I felt like like reflected identity. And there's so many, when we say identity, it's more, for me, it's race. And then there's so many other things like social class. James Baldwin says in his essay, Black English, that as soon as you, this is literally about language itself. He's like, as soon as people open their mouths, the problem with language, not the problem. He's like, as soon as people open their mouth, you can identify so many things about them. How many people might live in their house, what their salary looks like, all these different things, right? And I'm like, Baldwin was able to open his truth, and the way he spoke it, like that inspired me to be a writer for sure. And so when I'm a professor, well, you know, I'm doing my thing, I'm always trying to introduce work that people, I'm like, hopefully this can connect to somebody's identity in here. Because if it can break you free, like how Baldwin broke me free, if this can break you free, you ain't gonna set no limits on yourself.
You said that, but I follow Iyanla because she like the grandmama that I lost. She said, each time you open your mouth, you inform others of your state of mind and the conditions of your heart. And I've been looking at that post. I kind of screenshotted and shared it to all my social media, but I look at that in the morning now. I've been looking at that for the last couple of weeks, and I look at it because it the old me would have then watched what I said, but now I'm watching what I say, and it is a difference in the tone, but it's more so I'm not worried about what I'm saying out my mouth, but I'm actually becoming aware of what I'm speaking, because we know words are powerful. They have to seek out the mission of the tongue. So if you're speaking negativity over your life or hesitation into your life, then that's what you're going to be faced with. You know, but if you have optimism, you know, that's how you become that rose in the concrete jungle, because you had a certain level of optimism that was put into you, that you went out and sought yourself. And lucky that, well, you got onto who your mentors were. Who were those people that? Well, I'll ask this question first. On social media, I asked the question: when was the first time you had, to the black man? When was the first time you had a black male teacher? Who was the first black male teacher you had, or how many black male teachers did you have?
That's how many is a great question. I'll say my first black male teacher was Mr. Brooks. He was my fourth grade teacher in elementary school.
Okay.
How many black male teachers did I have in total? Let me count. Because it was one in elementary school, one in middle school.
Yep.
And I had my math teacher. Probably in male, not female. So or black woman. I probably oh my God, am I at three? So wait, three. I want to say three, maybe four. I might be forgetting somebody, but I'm gonna say three because that's all I can name it.
The typical answer was one. For me, I didn't have my first black male teacher until I was in middle school. And I can't even count him because he was trying to hit on my aunt. So I had just like thrown him to the side because he wasn't fueling me. He became like the other men that I knew in my life that was just chasing some tail. So I kind of excluded him and that whole year I didn't pay attention in that class because I just couldn't fight that image. But most of the people who responded, 1 to 2. So we speak about the image of black men that we have in this country, and the idea that many of us, like you said, on even on a college level, you have so many that drop out. We have so many that don't matriculate for whatever reason. Is no fault or blame, but for whatever reason. But representation is everything. Now, once I got to college, I because I chose to go to the blackest school in America, Coppin State University, because I had to. Up until that point, I was in private schools. So much so that I went to Archbishop Curley. Our teachers wore the robes with the rope around their weights, like with the Jesus sandals on, the Birkenstocks. Like that's how white it got for me, or not black it got for me. So I consciously said, "What's the blackest school that I can go to in Maryland?" And it was Coppin. I had to be that black because I had been so detached from cultural representation up into the 12th grade, and I couldn't do it anymore. Naturally, and I didn't even say that out loud, but I think mentally that's where I was at in life. So it really matters. So I love to hear people like yourself going back to their schools or going teaching, because that's representation. You look like somebody you're teaching, and that inspires them to say, I don't necessarily want to be a teacher, but I can do that. I can be great in this moment. What message do you have for young people right now who kind of are struggling with identity and not understanding how great they are and what their possibilities are?
I would say something that I always keep in my mind,
Mm-hmm.
and I don't maybe it may not relate to the identity, but it's just never too late. It's never too late. It's never too late to do anything that you want to do. It's never too late.
Mm-hmm.
Like even for me for music, like I'm doing music right now, and I don't know where, if I don't have a like, because when I got into poetry, I never thought I would make it big. Never thought I would become youth poet laureate. Never thought, blah blah blah. With music, don't know where that will take me. Don't know. But it's never too late. I thought getting at 19, I was the oldest person on that whole Baltimore City. You watched this. I was the oldest person. I was the oldest person there. I had everybody beat by a year or two. I was in college. When you saw me, I was a freshman in college. Everybody else was still in high school. So it's like I was the oldest of my peers. But it was never too late. It was never too late. Never too late. And like ask for help. Ask for help. Say you need something. Like that's something I have a problem with a lot is just admitting when I need something that I may not have. And that could be money, that could be somebody's time. I call my partner, my girlfriend, the counsel. She's like, I need counsel. Whenever I'm like, I need to just vent or need somebody to listen to these ideas and tell me if I'm going the right path, I'll be like, I need counsel. She's taking dance movement therapy. So she's kind of like learning how to be a therapist, but through movement. So I'm always like, yo, I need counsel. Like, I just need you to listen, maybe, like, whatever.
So does that mean there's going to be a Derick movement spoken word piece coming soon?
I don't know. I have no idea. Maybe some choreography to some music or something that she might help me with. Like we can see about that.
Because and that takes us to you sent me a clip of a cartoon that you are doing the voiceover for. How did that come up, or how did that come to be?
That animation or the poem?
The animation.
So Shinyer's daughter, Lovey Marin, she is an animator, and I think she's going to school for animation, but I know she knew how to do it before school. And when I had saw one of her animations on IG, I was like, yo, there's this poem I got that just got recognized or nominated for this Pushcart Prize, which is kind of a big writing prize, national writing prize. And I was like, yo, like, and I love this poem. And I'm like, I want to like celebrate it by pairing an animation with it that tells also this story that I think is so important that we see, it's like, I don't want to use the word generic because it's something we know about. But more so the piece of Black Sun is Persephone. Like when I was in MFA, this is about the MFA, like I don't know anything about Greek mythology. And Greek mythology for me is very non-Black. It's just,
well, it's so Black that it came from black.
Aesthetic. You're right. You're right. You're right.
If you study black theater, you'll
Right.
see the origins of
You're
Greek
right.
everything.
Right.
You
Where
know,
it came from. Where it came from was black. But what we were learning was not about where it came from. So
mhm.
so that poem, I was like, yo, like I just want to paint this how I know. So the of Hades, I forget what I think Persephone is like the goddess of spring or the goddess of agriculture or whatever.
Mhm.
And like the whole story is like when I see the story, and then of course what's going on in the 4 years that I've been away, still police brutality, still the same old bullshit in America. I'm like, and then I'm in this white ass space in the MFA. I'm like, I'm gonna take this story that y'all know so well, and I'm gonna flip it to something that is more familiar to me, which is like every time I leave the house, my mom, it's always the same thing. Like,
Mhm.
check in, don't drive too fast, be aware of your surroundings, like don't have weed in the car, like whatever. Be smart and be safe. And when we did the animation, Lovey was like, do you want the character to look like you? And I was like, nah. I want it to be a character that I feel like, I don't know how many people can identify necessarily. I'm light skinned. There's some privilege that comes with that. But I just, that decision to not have the character look like me, though it's my poem, I was like, I want to make it more universal, more something that people might be able to connect with if I wasn't in the representation matters. So if I wasn't necessarily the figure of a
Mm.
life figure, I don't know. I think about stuff like that.
That's hearing you speak about that. It's I'm not going. I keep saying what I'm not going to do, and then I say the word that I want to say. But it's sad that we're in a space where individuals can't represent themselves
Hmm.
as themselves for for um for desiring not to hurt someone else. And that I love the fact that we are becoming aware of that, but I think we're so aware of it that we're stifling ourselves.
Hmm.
Because yeah, that's that's another thing. So tell me where this, because this is just a snippet.
Hmm.
When will we be able to see the entire project? And because animation takes a little bit of time, but can you tell me like what can we expect, or when will this be fully released?
I wonder what I sent you, because if you saw the minute
Hmm.
from the beginning to where she's standing at the end in the snow, did you see that part?
No, I
No.
just saw
Oh,
like the first 30 seconds of it.
I have the whole clip I need to send you. We
Hmm.
have a whole thing out. That is my mistake. I might have sent you the sneak peek trailer or something. But we
Yeah,
got
I
the
think that's what I think you just sent me the beginning clip.
that's on me, my fault, Nate. We got the whole thing out. The whole thing is released. I'll share it
Just
with you for
tag me in
sure.
and I'll share it out for you. I love it. I love old school animation, not like everything so perfect, but I just like the imperfection. Like I like the original Simpsons, where it was just a little off, just a little crunchy. Uh, but because it makes you pay attention to what they're saying more. When the spectacle is bigger than the content, the verbiage, then you kind of it kind of goes back. But what do you want people to get from watching this, or listening to it, or hearing it?
Hmm. Hmm.
Or what's your hope that they, because you can't really predict what somebody will take
Hmm.
from it, but
Hmm. I just hear the words and see the visual and
mhm.
whatever. I just want them to feel something. Um, and and then maybe feel inspired to, if they want to one up it or create their own content, because I don't know what somebody will think or how they'll feel, but if it moves you enough to create something else, maybe inspired by this work or inspired in the similar lane and fashion of that work,
Mhm.
my job here is done. Because I mean, what I create is what I'm gonna create, and it's not gonna be for everybody. So somebody be like, "That sucks," but I'm gonna do
Mhm.
something. I'm gonna like then that's if I've inspired you to have that kind of reaction to then want to do something and create a poem with
Mhm.
content that might include that Greek
Yeah.
mythology or whatnot. Wonderful, because that's what inspired me. I saw this
Right.
Greek mythology was presented to me. I was like, slap in the face. Let me flip it. So if somebody
Mm.
else wants to flip it, cool, we're gonna keep flipping this and it's gonna get more attention. I just
That's the movie that I'm waiting for. I'm waiting for people to show us the origins of this Roman and Greek culture, and show us the real African root of that, without Euretias, and do something. We have a lot of. We actually have a play based off of Greek mythology with black actors, but I want us to see the origin of it. And this was kind of when you were speaking, I saw that happening, and I'm surprised nobody has taken a liberty in creating that. We have all these Xena warrior princesses, but nobody has ever thought, let me tap into some of this Euretia or this African culture, and kind of put word to that mythology, if you will, or that kind of lore. But in terms of where you are right now, do you have any projects coming up or anything that we can talk about? I know you are one of your poems is in a competition right now.
right. So the Black Sonnets Persephone is right now being nominated for a Pushcart Prize. I don't know when. Like the publisher nominated me, and I asked them, like, is there a timeline for this process? Who will I find out from? And I mean, what they told me was a little unclear. So I'm just gonna give that timeline this whole 2021, and we'll see what happens. But that's in the works. My brother and I'm a twin. I don't know if you know I'm a twin.
I didn't know that.
I'm a twin. We're both Libras. 16 is my number. It's a great number. It's a great number. But we've been writing, songs for like the past year. We actually have a song that's gonna be coming out soon. We gotta put like the copyright on it. We already purchased we got the beat and we already recorded it. We're just making sure that when we put it out, that it's like official, so we don't get sued or none of that, if somebody could take it or whatever. So we just want to be safe with it and do it the right way. But it's called Blue Green. And it's just like it got like a trap beat to it. I like the song because it's definitely different. It's something that's out of pocket, I guess, from maybe my normal like spoken word poems that you would have heard, or even this poem that we were just referring to. But it's called Blue Green. And it's still like lyrical. It still like has like, for me, what I like about it is like it still has the wordplay that I would have like in poems years ago. Like the wordplay is still there. So those things still stay with me. But that is, oh no, I got an informal reading for a play. My homeboy has this informal reading for a play on Sunday called Split Bean. I'm playing a homeless dude, which is great. A homeless college student, who has to like scrounge for food. So I'm like gonna tap into some personal scrounge for food memories.
Right, your hookup special days.
Yeah,
I got you.
Yeah, and then I'm doing this play. I'm not this play. This poem. I'm creating this poem for this, and it's actually I think it's in the name you have on Facebook, Vashti.
Vashti Blue.
Vashti Blue, but it's this character from the Bible.
Vashti.
Mm-hmm. So my girlfriend Aja's playing her in this movement piece, and the choreographer who did the piece was like, it'd be really dope if you wrote a poem about the queen. And I'm like, okay, all right, like I'm not familiar with the character, so I gotta do some reading. But I have that coming up as well.
Vashti was it's and most people don't know that like Vashti McKenzie, that she's a bishop now, but that name has a lot of weight in the Bible. So I would definitely, I know it will inspire somebody, her story, her personal story. It's kind of why I connected my jewelry company. That's my jewelry company to that name. But I'm very proud of where you come from. I want to hear more of your story. That's one of the reasons why I wanted you to come on, because I wanted you to share a little bit, because I think out of all the poets, the younger poets that I was following, you were the one who just started showing up and doing things. But no, if you're outside of your circle, of course, people don't know who you are, and that's what this platform is for. People to be able to share their story and just tell people who they are. Money is really tight right now. We're in a crazy pandemic, so I want to know my money and my time and my energy is going towards individuals who think like I think. We're in a political struggle in this country yet again. So people want to know
who they are. And artists and entertainers and celebrities are having to drop that facade and that curtain and come from behind that curtain and really show who they are. People want to know who that person is at the core of all the talent and all the hoopla that's around and surrounds them. And I like the fact that you're trying different things now, and you're not just, oh well, this work. I'm gonna keep this thing going until the wheels
Right.
fall off of it. But just recreating yourself and just stretching as an artist, because you'll learn more about yourself in your stretching moments than
Mhm.
you do in your safe moments, where you just in your pocket and you're doing what you do best. So I can't wait to see and listen to the music. Come back on. Bring your writing partners and your music partners and such, and y'all can vibe out. And I'm always willing and open to helping other artists and just hearing. I like to hear stuff. I've been in a bubble for the last year or so now, so I'm ready to get back into the art of it all. As we close out the show, one of my last questions that I always ask all my artists: what advice would you give to your 17-year-old self? And what question would you ask your 100-year-old self?
Ooh, what advice would I give to my 17-year-old self?
Mm-hmm.
Hmm. Listen to me more. Like, listen to me more. Like,
Mm-hmm.
because I feel like at that time I was, and things happen in crazy ways. Like sometimes it could be somebody that I know talking to me, but I'll be like, man, that's God. Like I needed to hear that in that moment, and God or some spirit is speaking through you right now to deliver that message to me.
Mm-hmm.
Because like I can remember like my friend Muhammad like used to like it hurt my feelings back then, but he was like, you go to like all of our mentors and always seek advice. He was like, but why don't you ever just go to yourself? Why don't you ever just sit with yourself? You don't gotta always ask. You can just listen. And at first I was like, I carried that with me for a minute, but I was like, nah, I needed to hear that. Like I need to just
Trust yourself.
trust myself. So at 17, 100%, I would tell myself that. And then at 100, I'll ask myself, did I listen?
Mm. So these answers aren't finite. So they aren't the end all be all. And I always suggest that the people who I bring on ask yourself this question in 5 years, in
Mm,
12 years, in odd intervals. Like when big things happen in your life, ask yourself those questions because it tells you a lot about where you are in that moment. The
mm,
question that you would ask to your 100-year-old self is normally the space that you're in right now. The advice that you would give to your 17-year-old self is normally the struggle that you're in right now. So it says a lot about where you are, and that answer will change. Sometimes it'll go backwards, sometimes it'll go forward, sometimes it go up and down. But it will change as you grow. Your advice will change and your questions will change because you have to know something in order to ask a question. So you'll know a little bit more, and your question to your 100-year-old self will get a little bit deeper. As we're closing out Black History Month, uh, can you name that one person in history, whether it be somebody you can touch or somebody who was just a distant creative in your aura, uh, who has inspired you the most?
yeah, I mean, if it's okay that I say James Baldwin again,
Okay,
like
okay.
James Baldwin, and it's so crazy. I was watching the interview. I don't know if you've seen the interview with him and Nikki Giovanni,
Mm,
where they did it in London. It's like two-part. It was on Soul.
yeah.
Um, like listening to him, I was just like, damn, like if there's one person I wish that was still around today that I could, if the question was like get a coffee with, learn from, attend the symposium, it would be Baldwin. It's so scary that he just saw ahead, I feel like ahead of his time. Like he
Mm-hmm.
just, and one of his messages he was saying to Nikki is like, it's always about the children. She's like, whenever you're doing something, just think about like how they're going to inherit it. That's me paraphrasing it. How he says it, of course, is like masterful. But Baldwin.
And
open your eyes and your ears a little bit more because Baldwin exists in people that I've come across in this city. He exists in this city,
Mm-hmm.
and it may not be his whole aura. It
Mm-hmm.
may be an essence of who he is. But we've had professors, we've had mentors, we've had fellow artists that kind of embody that image.
Mm-hmm.
And his speech was know your history, don't be afraid of it. Don't be ashamed of it, and speak your truth. So
Mm-hmm.
that was kind of the essence of who he was, and being unashamed of who he was and how he was and where he was and where he came from. And I think you'll have that, and look at yourself and see how much of you is connected to who and what you love about him. Find
Mm-hmm.
those qualities in you, and you'll start seeing them in other people. Um, too. I hate when I get to this point because you're younger. I'm talking like this, but I didn't have people talk to me like this. I was surrounded by a lot of people who were in their own space and didn't necessarily look like us. So when I get a chance to talk to anybody, I just normally speak from my experience. So I'm really proud of what I've seen you accomplish. You've done a lot in 25 years, sir. So take a break and just bask in that. Not too much of a break because we want to see more art from you, but just relish in. I know you know how far you've come, but really look at it. Like look at the timeline and be speak your truth no matter what. But don't worry about it yet. It's gonna come. It's gonna come. But this has been the Artist Exchange Radio Show with the phenomenal Derick Ebert. You can find him on social media, Facebook, Instagram. Are you on Twitter as well?
Not on Twitter.
So tell people real quick how they can find you. We'll close out in that way.
Sure, you can find me on IG at think_Derick James. You could also check out my website, DerickJ.com, just JE.com. And then Facebook is just Derick Ebert.
And I don't normally ask ahead, and I should because it's very rude. But can you close this out with a poem?
I can close you out with a poem. I don't have any from memory. Do you mind if I quick pull one up?
Do what you gotta do, sir. So while you're pulling up something, up next is the Cocktail Social. Tune into that. And don't forget the Binge-Worthy podcast every Tuesday on YouTube, the Artist Exchange page. And don't also forget, We Are You Radio Morning Crew, Monday through Friday, out of Atlanta. You hear me talking, weareyouradio.com. And don't forget, like, share, subscribe to Be Exposed Radio. Donate, if you will. And the lovely Ebert, the awesome, phenomenal Derick, is going to close us out with a little saying, with a little word. Whenever you're ready.
I got you. I'm moving because I got these dual screens up. So, they're both short. Maybe I could, if you want, I could read two of them or I'll just read one.
Go ahead.
Okay. I'm going to read the first one. It's called Others Will Try to Dress You Too.
Okay.
Others will try to dress you too. And whatever they tell you, ignore because being someone else is expensive. I'll tell you carelessly how I've looked for myself in department stores and in each rack found emptiness clothed in a new gown. And for what it's worth, all life may be is the God inside of us waiting to surface harmlessly like a submarine after war. And I too wear my battle scars more than clothes just to prove my skin is hugged by what's tried to kill me, but couldn't. And now, no, wait, I'm sorry. Yeah, and now I've grown up to love myself. And my locks are an extension of me, like hangers holding up good clothes. And now I try on smiles and they fit me instead of falling off. And in the distance where the eye can't see, past the blur of today, shrouding the future quietly, is a place for you too, ready and bursting with joy, like a summer well spent searching tirelessly for reasons to laugh, unbothered and free like a kite veering across the sky, without worry. And isn't that all you want? xylophone colored teeth, yearning to play a beautiful song, to unzip your deepest fears and let them go. So that's a poem others will try to dress you to. You want me to do another one? I could do a few more if you want.
But we got time for. Oh, we got time for one more.
All right. This one is about, I'm going to just read it. It's called Above the North Canadian River. It's after a poem by Terrence Hayes.
Okay.
Below their graying feet, the yawning river, a familiar spectator watches. Its murky mouth, like America's history, mangling the neck of a body forfeited air. Attached to the rope, a mother and son hang, their bodies cast to the water, bait to draw the races. They appear above the river, wearing black hats like dark halos, a cold swarm of grins. If there is a God, where is she hanging? Mother, creator of sons, now but a name, the son's chest, an empty space with a message to witnesses. Seek life elsewhere. It's a poem. If you ever look up a postcard from Okima on Google,
Okay.
Warning, it's of a lynching, which is what Terrence Hayes' poem is about and what this poem is about. But that poem was from that image of that, because it was the actual postcard, of above the North Canadian River. It's crazy.
So don't be a stranger. I'm looking forward to that, to the entire cartoon or animation that you created with that lovely young lady. And send me your work. I'll definitely share it out for you whenever you have events coming up or projects coming up. I'm definitely always out to support. And thank you again for joining me. And I appreciate you coming out and taking the time tonight. Any last words or anything you want to say?
Thank you for having me, Nate. This has been wonderful.
Anytime, anytime. This has been the Artist Exchange Radio Show. Thank you again, Derick, for joining us. Continue to sports, continue to share out. If you are an artist and you have a voice and you want to talk, you want to share your artistry with the Artist Exchange and myself, definitely hit us up at the Artist Exchange Radio Show at gmail.com. You can find us on Instagram as well as Facebook at the Artist Exchange. So support. 8 years and counting. We're still going strong. We're going to continue to go strong. Thank you to all of our supporters. Thank you again, sir. Many blessings and love to you for coming on. And that's the Artist Exchange. So we're going to say peace out. Peace out, people.